Parliament TV, bringing Parliament closer to you.
Her Honor, the Vice President's question time.
Questions for oral answer understanding order number 76.
For a matter to be admitted, it has to be of recent occurrence.
Continue watching Parliament TV, a channel dedicated to bring Parliament closer to you.
Watch late drama. No one marking Palmer. Stream all 380 matches for just 90 kwacha on Showmax Premier League. Visit showmax.com to get started. Your entertainment is always on with DSTV Stream. Anywhere it's on. Thrilling sports action, captivating novellas, authentic local series, playtime for kids, unmissable reality, and much more.
Are you ready to party?
It's all on with DSTV Stream. Plus, it's already included in your subscription. And all you have to do is download the app and get your stream on. Anywhere. Please, come with me. Get all the best of GoTV.
Also, wow, let's do it.
Plus Premier League. Plus more movies. Plus more fun.
Our fun is just beginning.
To the future.
We're gonna raise
Plus series galore. Oh, this is better than good. It's better than great.
all hands on deck.
It's Super Plus. Welcome back home. Upgrade to GoTV Super Plus today.
Hello and welcome to a very first edition of I'm a presenter, Joe Katama, and today we are taking a unique journey into the world of politics and public service of one of the most prominent former member of parliament. Now, in each episode, we'll sit down with some of the most influential leaders from our past to gain deeper understanding of the decisions that shaped our community and country. Now, these leaders who once represented us in parliament bring with them a wealth of experience behind the scenes stories and valuable insights on the issues that truly matter. So grab your seat and get to enjoy the program. Today I'm privileged to speak to Dr. Johnson Vernon MWAANGA. Welcome to meet your former member of parliament.
Thank you very much, Joe.
All right, Dr. VJ. I don't know what you'd want me to call you throughout the interview as Dr. VJ. All right.
VJ is fine.
Thank you so much. Dr. VJ, can you tell us about yourself?
Well, I was born on the 25th of June, 1944, at Macha Mission Hospital in Choma district of Zambia. My father was Samson Simagulika MWAANGA, and my mother was Rebecca MWAANGA. They were teachers, both of them were teachers, and my father was headmaster of Shungu Upper Primary School in Livingston, which was the only upper primary school for blacks in 1950. And my mother was teaching at Maramba School, which is now called St. Mary's Secondary School. I went to school at Shungu, and then later on I went to school here in Osaka, and then later on I went to Oxford. I did a course in a diploma course in international relations. I also did a youth leadership course at UCLA in the United States of America much before independence. I joined the struggle for independence in 1960, and I was provincial youth secretary for UNIP in Southern Province, then later became regional secretary for Choma Namwala, and then later I was posted after I did my diploma course in international relations at Oxford. I was posted to the British Embassy in Rome, where I served as a second secretary trainee under a man called Douglas Hard. And then after some time, I was sent to the British Consul General's office in Genoa on the western side of Italy. And just before independence, I came back to Zambia. And in October 1964, I was appointed Deputy High Commissioner to the United Kingdom, where I served for a year. Then I was promoted from there to become ambassador to the Soviet Union, as it was then called, now called Russia. I served there until '66, and then I came back and served as permanent secretary in the president's office, and thereafter in '68 I was appointed ambassador to the United Nations, and until '72. In '72 I became editor-in-chief for the Times of Zambia. '73 I was nominated to Parliament and became Minister of Foreign Affairs on that same day. And later on I served on the UNIP Central Committee. And later I went back to Parliament in 1991 as a Member of Parliament for VERNON Constituency in Rwanda, where I served for 2 terms as a Member of Parliament, and I was also Minister of Foreign Affairs, later Minister of Information and Broadcasting Services and Government Chief Whip, later Government Chief Whip until MMD lost power in 2012.
It has been a long journey indeed. Now, Doctor, what really motivated you to become a member of parliament? Because remember, this program is focusing on former members of parliament. Yes.
Well, I was eager to join parliament so that I could make a contribution towards coming up with laws which would be favorable to the people of Zambia, changing colonial laws that we had found on the statute books to make them more relevant to an independent Zambia, and also to save the interests of the people, because the struggle for independence was about serving people. It was not about serving self. It was about serving people, and I was eager that I should serve my people. And that is really what motivated me to become a member of parliament.
So, can you also share with us some of the defining moments in your political career as well as in parliament?
One of the defining moments, I guess, in parliament was to get members of parliament to understand what their roles were. Each time we had a new parliament, there was a seminar to educate new members of parliament about parliamentary etiquette, procedures. They had to understand the standing orders of parliament, the do's and the don'ts, and the kind of language which they were expected to use while they were members of parliament. And I think that one of the defining moments was when it was decided that we should work together with the other political parties, particularly after the elections of 2001, which were very close between President MWAANGA and President and then UPND President Anderson Mazoka. There was only a margin between them of 2%. President MWAANGA in the first election of 2011 had 29% of the vote, and Anderson Mazoka had 27% of the vote. It meant that that was very close. The matter was taken to Parliament. I was then in charge of campaigns in MMD, and I was subpoenaed by Parliament, by the High Court, to go and answer questions from UPND lawyers about how the election was conducted. And I spent 2 days on the stand in the High Court answering questions, and my answers were very consistent. And in the judgment that followed, the Supreme Court of Appeal ruled that the evidence I had given was credible and it was consistent throughout the 2 days I was on the stand. And UPND lost the petition. But there arose a need for us to work together, because politics is not just about winner takes all. It's about assessing the mood in the country and making sure that you try and work together. And that is why at that time I became National Secretary, for example, of MMD, and I worked very hard to come up with an idea that we must have a forum for inter-party dialogue, so that political parties together can sit down and interact on any issues in private and resolve these issues on behalf of the people. And I sought the assistance of the government of the Netherlands, which was very willing, and to be transparent. I also went to Netherlands together with opposition MPs, so that together we could sit down and agree on what kind of dialogue we wanted. And it was decided then that we should set up a center for inter-party dialogue, which still exists, but which is not being used to the extent that we had expected it to be. During my time, it was being used every 3 months. There was inter-party dialogue. Political parties got together to discuss contentious issues and agree on the way forward. So for me, that was a defining moment, because usually in countries where there has been political conflict, there is no dialogue between the government and the opposition. But I felt that there was need for dialogue. In 1991, MMD won the elections for MUNIP. We won 125 seats in Parliament out of 150. 125 out of 150. And the President Chiluba won by 74%, and KK lost by 24% of the vote. 3 months after winning such an overwhelming election, I went to President Chiluba and said, although we won this election overwhelmingly, we still have to have inter-party dialogue, to listen to what the opposition have to say, because they're not our enemies. We're not their enemies. We are in competition of ideas in terms of how we can serve the people of Zambia. And he agreed. So I called for a meeting for inter-party dialogue, and we had our first meeting. And these meetings continued right through up to the time when MMD left office. And the chairmanship of the Center for Inter-Party Dialogue rotated among the various political parties.
So, Doc, what are some of the challenges that you did face at the time you were serving as a Member of Parliament?
Well, one of the biggest challenges we had is that there seemed to be some misunderstanding as to the role of a Member of Parliament, because I used to get my voters in Ron constituency coming to my office and telling my secretary that they wanted to see me. I had an obligation to see them, only to find that they wanted money for school uniforms for their children. Now, traditionally, that's not the role of a Member of Parliament, but it was difficult to explain to people. Or sometimes they came and said, when we were at the bus station, our money got lost. It was stolen by someone. So we don't have money now to go back to Rwanda from here. So we said, no, let's go and see our Member of Parliament and ask him to help. And you find that you got involved in helping members for things which are not really the responsibility of a Member of Parliament, but you had to do them because trying to explain the role of a Member of Parliament to people under those circumstances was not easy. So it became very, very challenging, because they thought that the Member of Parliament was there to do everything for them, not even personal things. So that became a huge, huge, huge challenge. So we got to a point where I would leave some money sometime with my personal assistant. So if they come while I'm away, you can use part of this money to give them, so that they don't go and badmouth me in the constituency, because you know what happens in the constituencies. If you don't do certain things for members, they go back. They even exaggerate what happened. They'll go and say that our MP didn't even want to see me. He chased me, even if that didn't happen. And it spreads like wildfire in the constituents. But slowly, through my committee, my CDF committee and other committees in the constituents, we began to disseminate the knowledge and to make them understand that what the role of an MP actually is, But that was very challenging, not just in my constituents, but in many other constituencies. My neighbor in Rwanda was the late Ben Mwira. He was in Rwanda constituency, I was in Ron constituency. And while on this constituency issue, I better mention something very interesting, which is that before adopting our MMD candidates to go and stand in constituencies around the country, I announced that I was going to stand in Ron, in Wansh. And I got so many calls from people. Why do you want to go and stand in Ron? I said, why not? I said, but you should go and stand in Choma. I said, oh, you're mentioning Choma because I come from there. I said, I'm not one of those. I'm a nationalist. I can stand anywhere and win. And it turned out I had 92.6% of the vote in my constituency. So I told them it doesn't matter where I stand. I'm a nationalist. I can stand anywhere and win. So members of parliament, you know, for me, even having gotten that kind of percentage vote, I used to spend 1 week in the constituency, 1 week, because I was also the campaign manager for the presidents. 1 week with the president, 1 week in. So I set up committees just to campaign for me while I was out. You know. And even with that, I had 92.6% of the vote, which was the highest among members of parliament. So it's you teach people to understand that it's not about where you come from.
And Doc, maybe not to hold the issue of members standing the roles of members of parliament spans a long time ago. Since in your time you mentioned those challenges, and I think even the current members of parliament are still facing the same challenges. What do you think should be done?
Just education, you know. I think they should be educated in terms of through committees in the constituency to explain what the role of a member of parliament is. You know. Personal issues are not the responsibility of the member of parliament. But if the member of parliament is able to assist in some way, then he can do it out of his own volition, not because he is obliged to do so by virtue of being a member of parliament. It still exists even in constituencies in the so-called developed countries. It's very difficult to explain the roles of members of parliament when it comes to personal issues. Sometimes they bring the children and say, oh, you are a member of parliament, can you find him a job? No? And it's challenges like these which you have together with your members of parliament, which are very difficult to explain. And when I was there, I tried to help if I could. If I couldn't, I went back and said, no, I failed. But if I was able to find a job, I did find a job, and the children were placed in employment. But that was not my traditional role. That was not my role as a member of parliament. But I had to do it because I know there is a misunderstanding of what the role of a member of parliament is supposed to be. And that misunderstanding will continue for a long time to come.
So what is your word of advice or encouragement to the current members of parliament who are still facing the same challenges?
Well, let them continue dealing with it in the most diplomatic way that they can. And where they can help, they should help. Because at the end of it, refusal to help leads to exaggeration of what actually happened. When they go back, they say, oh, he even chased us from the office, you know? which may not be true, and usually it's not true. But those are the exaggerations that you have to be prepared to deal with. So they should do what they can to educate their members, their voters, but also to be prepared to do what they can. For example, if there is a funeral in the constituency, they come to the member of parliament to ask for help. If the member of parliament donates something, that's okay, because that's to help the community mourn one of their colleagues who has passed on. So it happens, I know, and it will continue to happen for a long time.
Sure. Dr. Vijay, you mentioned that you entered the parliament in 1973, and the most amazing thing that at that time my mother wasn't yet born. So I just want you to share with us some of your fellow members of parliament you served with, and how do you remember them? What are some of the unique things they used to do in parliament that still lingers in your mind?
One of the most interesting things about this, when I came from New York, when I was appointed editor-in-chief for the Times of Zambia, as I have already stated. So in 1972, I became editor-in-chief for the Times of Zambia. Then I was approached by a lady by the name of Zeni Njov. She said, comrade, I'd like to come, I'm looking for a job. So you're looking for a job as what? As a secretary. I'm a qualified stenographer. So I said, you are looking for a job. You are in the freedom struggle with me. How can you be looking for a job? Tell me that you haven't been taken care of. And so I gave her a job. She was my personal secretary at the Times. And come 1973, before the election, she came to my office to tell me that she needed to take leave for some time. I said, why do you want to take leave? She said, I want to go and campaign. I want to start Mule constituency in the Eastern Province. I said, wow, that's wonderful. That's where you belong. I said, we will support you. And we supported her, gave her leave, and we supported her, printed her posters, we supported her with funds. She went to Kazimura constituency and won. So the day we were celebrating her victory and also departure from the Times to go to Parliament, I got my letter nominating me to Parliament and appointing me as Minister of Foreign Affairs. So we ended up serving together in Parliament. That's one of the things fate can do. We ended up serving together in Parliament. What I noticed in Parliament, serving with senior colleagues in those days, most of them...
Maybe you can mention them if you don't.
Well, Mainza Chona was one, Ruben Kamanga, Justin Chimba, Jethro Muti, Alex Wanda, Seferino Mulenga, Dr. Mutumba Bull, Mrs. Lily Monze, and a number of others who were within Parliament. There was discipline among members. They understood what their role was. They went to Parliament for serious business. We all considered it at that time as an honor. That's why they are called honorable members of Parliament. We conducted ourselves with honor and dignity, both inside the House and outside the House, because that's what our positions demanded. So we had to learn from the elders the issue of discipline, and we carried that on. And later on, when I was elected to Parliament in 1991 on the MMD's ticket, I also realized that I had to serve the people, my constituency, namely Ron, and that there had to be discipline in the House. As I continued serving in Parliament for the next 10 years, and then later on I was again nominated to Parliament, there were times when I was Minister of Information and Broadcasting Services and Government Chief Whip, when there were cases of indiscipline in the House, people coming too late for Parliament. We kept a record, and me and my deputy, we kept records of who came late after tea, especially after the tea break, afternoon tea break, from Tuesday to Thursday, and then mornings on Fridays, morning, because that's the only day Parliament meets in the morning. And one day, when I was sitting in my office at Foreign Affairs, I received a visit from Mr. Herbert Chitepo. I don't know, I'm sure you must have heard of him.
Yes, I think the name is quite familiar.
At that time, he was chairman of ZANU, and he was a lawyer. He came to see me because at that time, ZANU had split into two factions, and there were problems between the two factions. He came to see me at my office on a Thursday and told me that his life was in danger. I said, if it's in danger, we can give you security right away. Right now, I can call the Commissioner of Police to arrange security for you. He said, okay, that's good. I will appreciate that. But let me go and lay the ground for that security. Is it possible for us to meet tomorrow? I said, yes, we can meet tomorrow, but it will have to be in the afternoon because Parliament meets in the mornings on Friday. So we agreed to meet at 14 hours at my house, at the office. So I went to Parliament on Friday morning and I reported to President Kaunda that Herbert Chitepo had requested for assistance. I offered it to him, but he didn't want to take it immediately. He said the following day, the police, to get security for him, to be on alert so that on Friday when we were meeting, the security people would come and then they would escort him to his place and stay there until the situation had improved. So Parliament on Friday starts in the morning, 9, and at about 9:25, my permanent secretary at the time, called Julian Masaninga, he said, they called the Speaker's secretary. The Speaker's secretary sent a message to me in the chamber. And he said, oh, Minister, your permanent secretary wants to speak to you very urgently. Very urgently. So I got out of the chamber and I went to the Speaker's office and I took the call. And to tell me that Mr. Herbert Chitepo had died. I said, what happened? He said, his car, a bomb exploded under his vehicle at his house. So I went into the Parliament and took leave of the leader of the house and found out what had happened. I even went to his house in Livala.
That was sad indeed. So in case you've just joined us, this is Meet Your Point, and I'm speaking to Dr. Vernon Johnson MWAANGA. Doc, maybe to continue, I just want to find out how were you connected to your constituency since you seemed to be a very busy man?
Well, I used to have committees. I set up committees, one committee dealing with issues in the constituency. It comprised men, women, and youth. And they used to report regularly. We've been touring. I'd send them some money to visit the constituency, identify problem areas, and let me know. For example, they had identified the fact that the schools needed rehabilitation. And at that time, out of the 19 schools we had in my constituency, I managed to rehabilitate 18 constituencies. And then there were requirements at the hospital, Ron Hospital. I arranged for some friends of mine who were in the medical profession abroad. They donated some equipment which was being used for operations and so on to improve service at the hospital. We wanted the markets to be lit up, so we put up lights at the markets, floodlights, so that people could see what they were doing. Some roads needed to be mended. We arranged for the roads to be mended, and it was through my committee I was able to identify, because each time I came from abroad, if I came from abroad as foreign minister, I would spend the weekend listening to the reports and touring and looking at some of the work which had been authorized to see what was actually happening. So I had very, very strong links with the constituents. And by the way, when I decided to stand in Ron, I told the party committees in Ron that I wanted to serve only for 2 terms, which meant 10 years. But after my 10th year, they said, we want you to continue. I said, well, I cannot dishonor the promise which I made to stand for 2 terms of 5 years each, and you have to find someone else, and I'll come back here to campaign for that person once you have found the person. That is exactly what happened. I stood by the decision that I had made. But my constituency still wanted me to continue. To this day, former members of my committee in Ron, when they're in Lusaka, they still come and pay Kete scores on me.
Oh, that's very interesting. Doc, as we move forward, so what were you doing to ensure that the voices of the people in your constituency are heard in Parliament? Well,
through the issues that I've mentioned, once the people told me what they wanted, as a member of the government, I couldn't go and begin making demands in Parliament because that's not allowed, as you know. You can't go and make a statement, oh, my constituency needs this. When you're a member of the government, the backbenchers can. So I approached individual ministers who had to do with the issues which members of my constituency had raised, to deal with these issues and to make sure that they're actually dealt with. And I would report back to them that, yes, this has been agreed, it will be done on such and such a day. Let me know if it's not done so that I can put pressure on the minister concerned. That is the way I was able to do it. Listen to what they wanted, take up the issues they wanted with relevant ministries, so that if there were party issues, I was also a member of the National Executive Committee of the ruling party. I took it up in the National Executive Committee and I spoke about them there if they had to do with party issues. So there was constant link between me and the constituency and making sure that their problems were actually attended to. Once the committee was told about the problems, they evaluated them and they sent a report, or they talked to me on the phone and told me about it and sent me a report later. Now let's look at the post-political life. How has been life been after leaving politics and public service? Well, it has been good. I feel a sense of satisfaction that I did my best when it mattered the most. I feel that in politics, like in other disciplines in the public service and as well as in the private service, there has to be generational change. You know? There has to be generational change. I feel satisfied that I did my part. Of speakers at Parliament, I remember Speaker, the late Honorable Muliato first, then later we had Honorable MWAANGA, who served as also Speaker of the National Assembly. Earlier on we had late Wesley Nyirenda, who was Speaker of Parliament, and I remember the clerks we had Mwerachiwe Sakunda, and then later on Doris Mwinga. Mwerachiwe Sakunda was clerk even at the time when I was an MP under UNIP. So he served as clerk of the National Assembly for quite a long time. So it's I feel satisfied that I did my part. I do get disappointed when I listen to parliamentary debates sometimes and hear some of the language some of the MPs use against each other. That is unnecessary. And during my time as government chief whip, we introduced a lot of disciplinary measures. And I remember a time when we had, there was a tiff within Parliament between two honorable members. And then I summoned them to my office, the chief whip's office in Parliament. I said, you know that you are not allowed to have a tiff within the premises of Parliament. Who started it? They accused each other of having started it. But what they didn't realize is that there is also CCTV in Parliament. And so I got CCTV from the head of the security department of Parliament, and I could see who started the tiff. And I wrote them letters asking them to exculpate themselves. They sent me letters, both of them were denying it, took the matter to the Standing Orders Committee, and then I played in the two accused, and it became clear that one of them had started it, and we suspended that member for 6 months without pay as punishment. And after that, I think there was much greater discipline, because members of Parliament must accept that there are disciplinary rules to be followed in Parliament.
All right. So what role are you playing now after you left politics and also Parliament?
Well, I'm a consultant. I act as a consultant for a few international companies, and that is the role I play. As you know, there are no benefits for former members of Parliament. Once your gratuity, that's the end. Parliament after that doesn't with you. Unlike in South Africa, for example, where if you have served for 5 years, they continue. If you have been a member of Parliament for 5 years, you will receive a small allowance to enable you to manage your life after you've left Parliament. We don't have that system here, and they don't have that system in many other countries. So once you have left Parliament, that's it. You just have to be on the touchline watching from a long distance to see what is happening in Parliament, and hope that new members will uphold the dignity of the House.
All right. I know you highlighted some of the issues that you would want to see in the current Parliament. So maybe my question would be that what is the biggest issue that the current Parliament should focus on?
Well, one of the issues will have to be the Constitution. I am a strong believer that our women are underrepresented in Parliament. We now have just a little over 7 million registered voters in Zambia. Out of the over 7 million voters we have, 53.3% are women voters. 53.3% are women. 47.7% are men. But if you look at Parliament, members of Parliament out of 163, with 156 elected members plus 8 nominated. And you have 26 members of Parliament out of 163, excluding the Speaker, and that's underrepresentation of women. We are part of the SADC protocol and the AU protocol that promotes gender equality in Parliament. In the local councils, the numbers are even worse. 1,730 councillors. Out of that, we have 137 women councillors throughout the country. That is unacceptable. And Parliament has to begin looking at the possibility of mandatory provisions which would compel political parties to ensure that they have a minimum of 40% women representation in Parliament and in the local councils. For me, that's one of the most important things that Parliament needs to do, because I know that our population is growing. At independence, we were less than 3 million, just under 3 million. Now we are almost 21 million or more. So the population has been growing. And our Parliament is also growing, has also grown.
What are your concluding remarks and words of encouragement, advice to the young people who are looking forward to being the next VJs?
My encouragement to them is that be serious. I became an ambassador at the age of 21. I was 21 years when I became an ambassador. I was 22 years when I became permanent secretary. I was 29 years when I became Minister of Foreign Affairs. And I was under an obligation to perform better, to pave the way for younger people to be appointed to important positions. My advice to the younger generation in Parliament is that please be serious with your work, and please, you should discipline your language, discipline your tongues, so that you speak in a civilized manner. You can make your demands without insulting anyone, because this is important, in terms of the future. My advice is that don't lose hope. You still have a chance to make it to the top, but you will make it to the top only if you are disciplined and you are serious and you understand what you're doing.
Dr. Vernon MWAANGA, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity out of your busy schedule just to accommodate us to speak to you as Parliament TV. We don't take this for granted. Thank you so much.
Pleasure is mine. Yeah.
Dr. Vernon Johnson MWAANGA, featuring Honor Meet, your former Member of Parliament. I'll be your presenter. My name is Joe Akatama. On behalf of my camera person, Emmanuel Kalova, stay glued to Parliament TV and radio.